Well, we've been looking at this rich book by Pema Chodron, Welcoming the Unwelcome, Wholehearted Living in a Broken-Hearted World. And we've been looking at these wonderful tools that she provides for us to change the way we think, to change the way that we live in this world, and ways for us to live in these turbulent times. And we do this truly in two steps. The first step is through awareness, and I call that waking up. Being aware of our thoughts, our deeply rooted belief systems, the way we are in this world, our patterns that we've developed over time. So the first step is awareness, waking up. And then the second step is growing up. And that's where we use these tools. We use these tools to grow spiritually, to change the way that we are in the world, and to change the way that we hold our world. Welcoming the unwelcome is all about growing up. For she's asking us, Pema Chodron is asking us to make a commitment to be uncomfortable, to be vulnerable. And as we've talked about in these last couple of weeks, the ego does not want us to be vulnerable. The ego is there to protect us, to keep us safe, anything but vulnerable. Vulnerability is the arch enemy of the ego. It's the nemesis of the ego. And we recognize too that we are more than ego. We are more than our thoughts. We are more than our feelings. We are more even than our beliefs. So we come back week after week to church to see, what do we need to wake up? Where can we use tools to grow spiritually into spiritual wholeness? That's our goal. That's our spiritual journey is what do I need to shake up within us? What needs to be shaken up? And whenever I hear the term shaken up, I'm reminded of the Sermon on the Mount and Jesus speaking to all of his followers and trying to convey to them how are they to treat one another. And in Luke 6:38, we have the phrase where he is given the people, where he says, give and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And his message for the people is a message of you always receive more than you give when you have a generous heart. And he's conveying to live a life in mercy and generosity. And what could be more generous than to love our neighbors and as ourselves? The second commandment, to love our neighbors as ourselves. And all of the tools that we've been exploring over these last few weeks are grounded in that foundation of loving our neighbors as ourselves. Well, I'd like to revisit one that we were introduced to last week, overcoming polarization. I truly believe that polarization is the essence of so much conflict within us and within our world. Conflict that we feel being at odds with one another. And polarization is simply how we look at people and thoughts and beliefs and groups, and we tend to polarize them at one end of the spectrum or the other, far apart. And when we do that, it's hard to find middle ground for peace. It's hard to find middle ground to connect. It's hard to remember that we are one. And it's sort of natural to go from one extreme to the other. There's night and day, there's hot, there's cold, there's up, there's down. And so we tend to separate into these categories. And in doing so, we create a scenario of us and them. Us and them. And that is fertile ground for conflict, fertile ground for discomfort within ourselves, and a sense of separation. And last week, I gave you the example of getting into the shower and finding a spider, and what do you do with that? And then the second tool was just like me. And that was the suggestion that you find a group of people, go to a store, go to a park where you can see people, and silently to yourself, when you see an individual, look at them and say, just like me, they want love in their life. Just like me, they want harmony in their relationships. Just like me, they want to feel safe. Just like me. That term, that phrase, just like me, creates an opening to embrace our world and move us closer to that place of oneness. And this morning, I'd like us to explore that a little bit deeper. Take a deeper look at maybe where we find ourselves ingrained in us and them. And so I'm going to ask you this morning to consider who or what group might be your them. Who might you be at odds with? Who are you holding outside your heart and not recognizing the oneness, the just like me-ness of? And I know in today's environment, in our society today, sometimes it's the government, or we've been bombarded, over these past several months, right in our face. Maybe the them in our life is a political party. Perhaps it is based on race or sex or sexual orientation or faith tradition. If only they would get it right. They're the problems in the world. We're making it them. It's us and them. We're polarizing. Or perhaps it's based on economy. We're distrustful of people that have too much money. And we're also judgmental of people that don't have enough, because if only they'd work harder. It's very sneaky how that gets into our thoughts. As we're reading the news, do we find ourselves, us, and them? I'd like you to practice this week, just like me. When you find yourselves doing that, when you find yourselves holding someone outside your heart, when you find yourself saying, oh, if only they get it right, or they're creating a problem, to stop. You can't envision them as people if you don't know who they are, but you can envision a group of people and say, just like me, they want to be happy. Just like me, they want love in their life. They want friends. They want family. They do not want to feel alone. And through that, we can make a bridge across that gap, that polarization that we create in our worlds. And we find more peace in our lives, as well as blessing our world at large with more peace. And this morning I have 3 more approaches, tools, perspectives to share with you. And I invite you to choose 1 or 2 that you might use during this week. And remember, what we're doing with this is we are taking off the glasses that we're wearing, and we're trying on different lenses. We're trying a different way of seeing our world. And the first one that we're looking at this morning is called Just As It Is. And remember, just a few weeks ago, we heard a beautiful poem, The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, where she shared in that poem, what just is isn't always justice. A beautiful phrase, something to make us think. Well, now that I've planted that seed, this is not that. Exactly. Although there's a component of that goes with this. So I begin with a quote from Pema Chodron. The wonderful irony about this spiritual journey is that we find it only leads us to become just as we are. The exalted state of enlightenment is nothing more than fully knowing ourselves and our world just as we are. And so I first want to recognize that there are times that our world, just as it is, does need to be changed, does need focus and attention to change. But what Pema is suggesting we do is that we come from a space of recognizing perhaps how far we've come with an open and a loving heart, to then move forward with those things that need to change through an open and loving heart, not through aggression or violence or hatred. but through the desire to move humanity along on their growth as humanity, as their growth spiritually. And so we've all had, and hopefully we have, perhaps every day, wonderful moments of recognizing how good life is just as it is. Perhaps it's when you have that morning coffee or tea and you have your special place where you relax before the world gets going. Perhaps it's during your meditation time. Or maybe it's at the end of the day when everything that you've wanted to accomplish is done and you relax and you recognize that things are good just as they are. And that the moment that you are in right then is unrepeatable and it is precious. Our heart wants to recognize those moments. The ability to do that, to recognize that things are good, that we are good just as we are, is always running in the background of our mind. There's as if there's a message back there wanting to get through about how good life is, how good we are, how good people are, that there's so much precious around us. And we want that more, all of us. All of us want to experience that more deeply, more regularly, more as a part of who we are. So what's stopping us? Well, one way to wake up to that is to pay attention of your mindset. Is your mindset so accustomed to looking for flaws that that is how you move through the day? That you have a sense of not enoughness. I am not enough. There is not enough. Or it's not good enough. I'm not good enough. I can't have what I want. If that's our mindset, we will find flaws everywhere. We will find something to remind us that life is not perfect. Now, I know that Unity of the Keys is very familiar with gratitude practices. And that's how we move towards a state of being more content. That's recognizing through being appreciative and showing gratitude of the goodness in our lives, starting with the smallest of things. We might notice that we love the way the sun is reflected off the water or off of a building or off of someone's face. We may notice the birds or the flowers, or we may come up to a conversation of someone we don't know and we hear them speak and they have a beautiful, delightful accent. It's like music. Or we appreciate music, like the music that we heard this morning, or art. We're grateful for all those things around us. And the more that we recognize the goodness in our lives, the beauty and the gifts and the enoughness that is there, the more beauty there seems to be, the more abundance of good things in our life there seems to be. Keeping a gratitude journal is a wonderful way to be reminded of the goodness in our lives, appreciating the things that we have right here and right now. These are all tools that we have to help us. And if you find yourself closing down, not being appreciative of your world or yourself, you can use that term just as it is, as a mantra. I am complete just as I am. My world is complete just as it is. I am enough just as I am. And so that's the practice, the tool for viewing our world in a more appreciative way. The second tool is how to not lose heart. How to not lose heart. Well, it's hard to sequester yourself away from the world, even during the pandemic. And being involved in the world, being involved with other people, just looking at the news, it's hard not to lose heart sometimes, to be discouraged. And when we find ourselves starting to feel that unease within us, that discouragement, it's good for us to recognize that our emotions have gotten hooked. When our emotions get hooked, we are in a downward spiral where we will feel discontent and disappointment and sadness. When we get hooked, we may even get angry. Very. And when we get hooked, when our emotions get hooked, our brain's not really working. You might feel that we can't even express ourselves verbally the way that you want to. Have you ever had that experience where you've been involved in something where it's really been emotionally charged because you have a strong feeling of passion? Maybe it's about education, homelessness, social justice, whatever it is, and something happens and you can't even speak. Your sentences don't make sense because our brain is shut down. We've gotten so emotionally hooked into whatever has happened that in a way we've gone unconscious. And so the key here is to be aware of when that happens. Look at what your physical triggers are. When you get worked up, do you feel your heart beating? Do you feel sweaty in your palms? What is going on with you physically? You feel flush as your face gotten red. What is going on with you that you can recognize that you have gotten emotionally hooked? Because our role in this world is to uplift ourselves and uplift others. And we can't do that if we go unconscious, if we get emotionally hooked and it's as if we're spinning, we're on repeat and we can't get out. And the tool that we have available to us, which is so well known to us in Unity, is meditation. Go into a space where we can turn within in the silence, reground ourselves, recenter ourselves, reboot ourselves, so to speak, and come back into the world to love it, to love it, to love one another, to love ourselves, to love our world. And the third and last tool this morning is called Beyond the Comfort Zone. And Pema says, I'll share this quote, "The more willing you are to step out of your comfort zone, the more comfortable you feel in your own life. Situations that used to arouse fear and nausea come easier to relax in. On the other hand, if you stay in the comfort zone all the time, it shrinks." Well, we all have our comfort zone. We all have our comfort measures. We can think of a child, an infant, who sucks their thumb. Well, we're adults. So what in this world is our thumb? Where do we go? What do we do when we need to comfort ourselves? Well, it might be live streaming movies or TV shows. It might be the refrigerator. Could be a number of things that we do to soothe ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are times when we are stressed out and we need to do what we need to do to comfort ourselves, as long as we are able to keep it just this side of addiction. And not to fool ourselves. As long as we stay in our comfort zone, we can't grow. So imagine in your mind, if you will, 3 concentric circles. The smallest circle in the center is our comfort zone. We love it there. It's a wonderful place. Soft, it's warm, there's good stuff there. And then the furthest circle out is excessive risk zone, and we don't like to go there. But the middle circle, that is our zone of growth. And we need to be willing to step out of our comfort zone in order to grow. And that's truly what this work is about, these tools. It's inviting us to step out of our comfort zone, to do things a little bit differently in order to grow spiritually, in order to create new grooves in our brain, and to live our lives more in peace and in love. And the longer we stay right there in our comfort zone, those things that are kind of on the edge of it move, they shift into the learning zone that we don't go to. So our comfort zone actually does shrink. So our role is to stretch beyond that comfort zone little by little. For every time we do, we gain confidence. We gain confidence in ourselves. We gain confidence in our competency. And our lives are more comfortable. Our lives are more satisfying, and we find ourselves more content with who we are and where we are. We can also use the tool that we learned the very first week of when we're feeling discomfort, when we're feeling anxiety, because we're moving outside that comfort zone and we're going into our learning zone. We feel anxiety. Recognize the feeling. Open your heart. Turn within. Invite that anxiety to come right there, to be soothed, to be calmed, to be loved. Let that light within you just shine on that anxiety. And then recognize that your anxiety is no different from the anxiety that everyone else on this planet feels. And if you don't feel prepared to pull everyone else's anxiety into your heart at that given time, turn it around. Send the love from your heart out to all those that you know are feeling anxious for any and every reason. Healing and soothing their apprehension as well as your own. So we are traveling this path together. We are doing this through awareness and through change. I'd like to know what tools you are experimenting with, which ones you have decided to try in your life and how it's going, what challenges you are having, what successes you are having. You can email me at revdaybree@unityofthekeys.org. You can find my contact information there on the church website. Let me know what's working for you and what's exciting for you and what changes have happened in your life. For the world needs us, you and me, to reveal the love in our hearts, to wake up, to grow up, and to show up differently in this world. And so it is. Bless you.